What's good, everybody? It's your boy Shane G. We are back with another episode of Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. So before we get started, go ahead and make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content on the channel. New episode of Bar Exam dropped yesterday. If you're into music, go ahead and check that out. New episode of OTI, Open to Interpretation, will be dropping tomorrow. And you're watching this with me now. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely appreciate y'all. What I want to get into, though, is the backlash that Ice Cube has been getting for simply speaking to Tucker Carlson. Now, I'm one of those people who is of the belief that you should speak to people that you disagree with on certain topics, but agree with on other issues, because that's how you can make headway as far as the other issues that you care about. So, for example, if you are anti-war and you agree with somebody else, like let's say you're a lefty, you're anti-war, and you agree with a right-winger who is also anti-war, then y'all should work together on that issue. And then while working together on that issue, there are opportunities for you to talk to them about maybe some other issues. And because you already start from a place of agreement, they're more likely to listen to you. And my whole thing is, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing certain actions for, right? So are we doing things to just be heard, or are we doing things to actually create change? Because to actually create change, you have to strategize. You have to meet people where they are. You can't just shame people into believing what you want to believe. That never works. You have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, give them some grace and, you know, just let them know basically that you're not coming from a bad place, or you're not trying to label them a bad person or whatever, but you just want to have a discussion about, you know, whatever these beliefs are. So that's what Ice Cube did when he went on here to interview with Tucker Carlson. Now, I just want to react to certain segments of this video, really just the beginning portion, because I feel like that's very important. And then also there's one other little clip in there where Ice Cube is saying things, you know, that I think we all agree with. And, you know, I don't think we should discount that just because he's saying those things to Tucker Carlson. So I'm going to get started with the interview, and you know how we do. We'll pause and play as we go. And this is the beginning of the Tucker Carlson Ice Cube interview.
So why would you be doing this of all interviews? I mean, you could do an interview with anyone. You're doing an interview with me. Obviously, you're going to take abuse for doing that. Like, why would you do that?
Because I think it's silly not to talk to people.
Basically, the point I'm making, right? It's silly not to talk to people just because you disagree with them on certain things, you know, and there's no way to ever change people's minds if you don't speak to them. If you just write everyone off who doesn't think like you, then you're never going to change anything. You have to convince these people that your way of thinking is correct in order for change to actually happen. If you just want to be right and be heard, whether people respect what you're saying or not, that's a totally different thing, because you can just yell and be heard. You know what I mean? But it'll turn a lot of people off to whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, versus sitting down and having a discussion with them and not treating them like the enemy off the rip.
I think whether we agree or not,
Right?
that has nothing to do with it. You know, it's like, this is what it's all about. Let's talk about it. Let's debate. And you know, I've been shut out.
That sounds like right-wing extremism. And what about?
See, and that's what they do. That's what they say. They say, oh, you're platforming this person. Nobody ever said that in the 80s when Phil Donahue would interview KKK members, or when my man just passed away, really, really older guy. Dang, I can't, King, something, I can't remember his name. That's unfortunate. Let me pull his name up really quick. Old interviewer, Larry King. Is that his name? I think it's Larry King. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Let me double check. Larry King. Absolutely. All right. So perfect. I was talking about Larry King. When he would bring on people who obviously he totally disagreed with, why didn't we say that he was platforming them and giving them a voice to reach more people and all of this? No, it was a conversation, right? When Minister Farrakhan was on TV on one of the talk shows. I don't remember specifically which one it was, but he was on a talk show and he was interviewing with, it might have also been Donahue if I'm not mistaken, but and he was taking questions from the audience. And so all the white people basically in the audience were pretty much disagreeing with everything he said. And all of the black people in the audience basically agreed with everything that he said. So if you're not allowed to bring a guy like Farrakhan on, who people consider to be controversial, then that conversation doesn't happen. And both people's perspectives are never discussed. And it's like, oh, maybe I didn't think about it that way. Or, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't even get the chance to happen unless you're allowed to speak to people that you disagree with, people who are considered controversial, all of these things.
Boutism.
What?
When you do that, though, they act like you're platforming and then they act like you're endorsing. It's almost like speaking to somebody equals endorsement nowadays. And that's never been true before now. Just because you interview somebody and ask them questions does not mean you agree with them at all. I'm an atheist. I've interviewed Christians before. Does that mean that, you know what I'm saying? Like, does that mean that I all of a sudden am endorsing Christianity just because I've interviewed Christians? No, it means I want to have a conversation about why they believe what they believe. Doesn't mean it's going to change my belief system. It means maybe I'm curious, or maybe I'm trying to figure out, why so many people believe something that to me is obviously untrue. Like these are all, questions we come across. And it's like, if you're not allowed to have these discussions or you're just labeled a right-wing extremist just because you talk to a right-winger, like we're never going to get anything resolved that way.
But I've been shut out. Some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, I'm an outsider. And so, I'm not part of the club.
When he says that, he's speaking about a lot of different things, actually. But one thing in particular that he's definitely speaking about is the worldwide phenomenon that, was going on for the last 3 years. And he was against it. He was like, I'm not doing anything that hasn't been proven to work. Nothing that came out in 6 months or was rushed or whatever. Like, I'm not going to be putting anything like that in me. I don't trust it. And he actually lost millions in certain movie studios or whatever. He was supposed to do certain movies. And because he didn't want to comply with the regulation that everybody in Hollywood had, and, if we're being real, most of America had, he didn't want to comply with that. And so what ends up happening is he loses out on those movies. He's a producer and an actor, and, he lost work because of that. But he was willing to stand on that and lose, I think it was $8 million that he said he ended up losing. Or, however you want to look at that, he never had it. But you know what I'm saying? That was money that they were going to give to him that he ended up not being able to receive because he didn't want to do that thing, to risk his health, So that's the biggest thing that I would say is why, people would label him an outsider and things like that now. Because a lot of his other opinions, like if you ask everyday people, especially from areas where Ice Cube is from, or similar areas to where Ice Cube is from, like you're going to hear a lot of the same stuff that he said. It's just that a lot of other people are not going to say it publicly because you get canceled, you get ridiculed, you get called a right-wing extremist, you get called, they've called Ice Cube a lot of things. So that's just an interesting thing, that they'll label you depending on who you talk to, whether you endorse their ideas or not. They're going to label you.
So I have to go places for one that I'm welcome, and where I can voice my opinion without somebody, saying I'm a bad person and that they never want to have me on.
See, and that's the thing. That's what happens all the time. Is if you talk to somebody who, whatever circle you potentially belong to, If everyone in that circle, or the majority of people in that circle, disagree with the views of person X, you're not allowed to talk to person X in public. Otherwise, it's a blanket endorsement of everything they've ever said. That's the way people treat this, and that's what they're doing now. That's what they're doing to Ice Cube. Because I know people didn't watch this interview. Just based on the things that I said, or based on the things that I've heard people say about it, I know people didn't actually watch this interview, because I'm going to play you another clip here in a second where he's saying things that definitely lefties agree with, And to be real, most right-wingers that I speak to, as far as voters, people who lean conservative, they agree with the next clip that I'm going to play as well. So he's not saying anything controversial that we don't agree with. It's literally just because of who he's saying it to. That's the whole point of this video, and that's ridiculous.
Their platform again.
What platforms have banned you?
I've been I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So
now, if you watch The View, they were some of the biggest, pushers of the, you know what I mean? Like, they were saying, I remember Joy Behar says she may never leave her house without wearing a mask again. I remember her saying that. And when she said that, she was in the studio within 6 feet of a bunch of people not wearing a mask with a studio audience. So that's kind of how right there. And then there was pictures of her out to dinner and all of this kind of stuff, no mask, you know what I mean? And now, granted, it turns out, there's, not sure if this right here actually did anything. I'll just say it that way, because, I got to be careful on YouTube, you know what I mean? But there's not really any evidence that doing this with cloth actually did anything at all. But I remember her saying that. And I remember Whoopi saying things like, you're so selfish if you won't do this. This isn't about you. This is about everyone else. And then turns out that the thing that they were pushing on us didn't even stop the thing that they said it was going to stop. So they were very much on that train. You know what I mean? Like, as far as, pushing all of that, making everybody comply. You're a bad person. If you don't comply, you're going to kill your grandma, all that, right? And so I think that's probably the main reason why they wouldn't want to speak to Ice Cube, because I'm pretty sure he's been on there before. So what changed? What changed to why all of a sudden they wouldn't want him there now? I feel like it would, be that. So moving on, though, we're going to move on to this next clip, because I just thought that those things were interesting. He said that, a few people on The View didn't want him there. But this is something that I want to play, and it's another clip right from the same from that same episode, and is based on it's just a quick 60-second clip. And this is something that lefties and righties pretty much across the board agree with. So let me go ahead and play this clip for you.
I'm not mad at people because of their skin color. I'm mad at people because of what they do and the things they choose not to do.
Right.
There's a big problem in this country with the financial banking system and Black people and our access to capital. I know that when it breaks down, we have, 13 to 15% of the country trying to live off of half a percentage of wealth, 0.05% of wealth.
What about that could you disagree with as a lefty? Like, keep it real. What about that statement could you disagree with? And even take race out of it. The number gets a little bit bigger, but most people, the most recent statistic that I heard was 67% of the country cannot put their hands on $1,000 if they needed to right now. If somebody called you right now and said, yo, I need to borrow $1,000, otherwise I'm going to get evicted, or they're going to come take my car, or anything, would you be able to give it to them right now? I don't know too many people who can. So even taking race out of it, that's what he's talking about. So he's saying stuff like this to Tucker Carlson. He's saying that the rich and the elites, who he is admittedly a part of, are eating way too much, and they're not leaving enough for everybody else at the bottom. That's what he's saying. And we've talked about that on here many times. We talked about that on here many, many times, where the system has been rigged in such a way to where if you're on top, it's way easier to stay on top than it is for somebody in the middle to make it to the top, or for somebody from the lower class to make it to the middle, or even less likely for somebody from the lower class to make it all the way to the upper. These things don't happen very often in American society. And people like to act like it's an individual problem. It has to be systemic if 67% of the whole country cannot touch $1,000 right now. That's not very much money, but it is at the same time. It's a lot of money if you don't have any money. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we have to remember the things that we care about. We can't get caught up in personality battles. We can't get caught up in, oh, I don't like that this person said this about abortion, so that way I have to totally write off everything else they say, even though I agree with them on war. I agree with them on, you see what I'm saying? So it's this type of stuff that we want to avoid. We want to agree with people when we agree with them. It shouldn't matter what their personality is. You know what I'm saying? If the Ku Klux Klan leader comes out tomorrow and says, I love puppies, are you going to stop loving puppies because you disagree with everything else about this dude? No, right? So take that basic principle and apply it in other areas. Do I agree with this person on ending wars? Yes. Okay. That's one thing that we agree on, that we should work together on, because that's really important. Do I agree with this person on abortion? No. Okay. Well, that's something we'll push to the side for now, and maybe we'll come back to that later. Do I agree with this person on taxing the wealthy? To a degree. Maybe I want to tax them a little bit more than they want to tax them, but they do feel that they should be taxed. Okay, there's some middle ground there that we can reach. You have to take these things issue by issue, especially nowadays, because a lot of things get conflated. You know what I mean? A lot of things get conflated. There used to be pretty clear, you know, the Republicans were this, the Democrats were this. And then pretty much around the time of Bill Clinton, I would say, that all changed. And every Democrat since then has just been a slightly more socially inclusive version of a Republican. That's really it. They're slightly more socially inclusive. And the laws that they pass don't benefit those people. They just talk nicer about them in public. You know, Democrats aren't going to shit on trans people in public, but they probably feel very similar to how a lot of Republicans speak openly about it. You get what I'm saying? So the point of the whole vid at the end of the day, like I said, is it's not about who the person is talking to or who is interviewing them or who's hosting them. The substance of what they say during that discussion, that's what matters. Okay? The substance of what somebody says is what matters. Like they say on one of my favorite podcasts, back on Feed, the truth is in the details. And with that, this has been Shane G. Politics as usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Once again, please like, share, and subscribe for all of the latest content. And we're going to catch you on the next one. Peace.